Welcome to True Echo, where real power meets real stories. In today's gripping drama, what starts as a shocking act of racism becomes a national headline. A black woman's passport is ripped in front of everyone, only for the agents involved to learn too late. She's not just any woman. She's an undercover FBI agent. And her father? He's the Supreme Court judge. What follows is a collision of power, politics, and cold justice that will leave you speechless. Now let's dive into the story. The airport buzzed like a hive, wheels rattling, voices rising in dozens of languages, a rhythm of arrivals and departures echoing across the polished floors. But at gate 14, time seemed to halt. Standing in line at passport control, Special Agent Dana Whitaker adjusted her navy blue blazer, her ID tucked discreetly inside her travel pouch. She wasn't here as an agent today, at least not officially. Today she was Dana Whitaker, daughter of Chief Justice Lawrence Whitaker, returning from a diplomatic conference in Geneva. Dana had never relied on her father's position, nor flaunted her own credentials unless absolutely necessary. She believed in protocol. In the system. The very system she swore to protect. But what happened next would shatter any illusion that her credentials could shield her from what it meant to be a black woman in America. A young white officer named Officer Grant eyed her as she stepped up. His jaw was tight and the grip on his scanner firmer than necessary. Dana handed over her passport, maintaining calm. "Where were you traveling from?" he asked flatly. "Switzerland." "Geneva." "Purpose of visit?" "International Security Conference." "I'm with." "Doesn't matter," he cut her off, barely glancing at the official stamps inside. Then, with a sudden jerk, he flipped her passport open, examined it with a dramatic sigh, and without another word, ripped it clean in half. The sound was louder than it should have been. People turned. A woman gasped. Dana froze. "You think this is funny?" Grant snapped. "Fake federal agents? You're not going anywhere with forged government documents, lady." Dana's breath caught, her mind racing. This wasn't a misunderstanding. It was deliberate. "That passport is real," she said with steady authority. "And I suggest you check the scanner logs before making assumptions." "Oh, I made no assumptions," he smirked. "You people always have an angle." Her hands curled into fists at her sides. "I want your supervisor. Now." "I am the supervisor." And with that, two more officers approached from behind, one already reaching for cuffs. "Turn around, ma'am." Dana didn't resist. She could have. She had the training. But that would have made the headlines worse. They cuffed her in front of everyone. What they didn't know, what they'd learned soon enough, was that Dana wasn't just another traveler. She was a decorated FBI agent with top clearance, personally selected to advise federal intelligence on judicial reforms. And the man waiting to pick her up just outside was none other than Chief Justice Whitaker, her father. Outside the airport, a black government SUV idled along the curb, windows tinted, engine humming. Behind the wheel sat Agent Miles Carter, Dana's longtime partner and friend. He had already texted her 3 times. No reply. Carter checked the time again. "She should have been out by now," he muttered. Inside, Dana was being led through a side corridor, not to an office, but to a cold secondary screening room with one-way glass and a table bolted to the floor. Her hands were still cuffed. "Sit," Officer Grant ordered. Dana sat slowly, the steel of the cuffs biting into her wrists. She didn't speak. She didn't need to. Let them dig their own grave. Grant tossed the torn passport onto the table with a scoff. "So, Agent Whitaker, huh?" he mocked. "Tell me, what's it like pretending to be someone you're not?" Dana finally looked him in the eye. "You just committed a federal offense." He laughed. "Sweetheart, the only thing illegal here is you trying to impersonate a federal agent with a fake passport. I suggest you call DHS. I'm in their database." "I don't need a database," he spat. "I trust my gut. And my gut says you're lying." That's when Carter burst through the security doors outside. Flashing his badge, he stormed past the front desk. "I need to speak to whoever's in charge of detainment. Now." The manager on duty, a thin, flustered man named Bradley Renshaw, stepped forward. "Sir, we're in the middle of—" "Where is Special Agent Dana Whitaker?" Carter barked. "Who?" Carter leaned in, slowly enunciating each word. "Special Agent Dana Whitaker, FBI. She landed 30 minutes ago." Renshaw turned pale. "Sir, I think there's been an incident." "You think?" Back inside, Officer Grant smirked as he opened Dana's travel pouch. "Let's see what other tricks you've got. A fake ID maybe?" He froze. The badge wasn't fake. The embedded chip pinged his scanner with a Department of Justice signature. Her credentials? Real. Her face. A match. And suddenly the look in Dana's eyes made sense. Grant stumbled backward. Just then the door opened. Renshaw entered with Carter behind him, his expression unreadable. Uncuff her. Now, Carter said coldly. Grant hesitated. Carter stepped forward. Uncuff her. The cuffs dropped with a metallic clang. Dana stood slowly, massaging her wrists. She picked up the torn passport without a word and turned to Carter. You all right? He asked. I've been worse, she muttered. Then she faced Grant. You better lawyer up. Renshaw stammered. Miss, Agent Whitaker, I assure you this isn't. I want security footage. Audio recordings. All of it. She looked at Carter. Get the Office of Professional Responsibility on the phone. Outside, the wind shifted, clouds rolling in. But the real storm had already begun inside. The interrogation room was left behind like a bad stain as Dana and Carter made their way to the parking garage in silence. Neither said a word as Carter opened the SUV door for her. Dana slid in, her eyes scanning the horizon, fury still simmering just beneath her composed expression. As Carter pulled away from the terminal, he finally broke the silence. You want to call your father now? Dana let out a tight breath. No. Not yet. Why? Because I want to see how far they're willing to go before realizing whose rights they just violated. I want it documented, Miles. Every second of this. Carter nodded. I already sent a report to OPR and the DOJ. They're requesting full footage from the Port Authority. Good. Then we're not just dealing with rogue officers. We're exposing a pattern. Think they targeted you because they recognized you? Carter asked carefully. Dana gave a bitter chuckle. No. They didn't recognize me at all. That's the point. I was just another black woman in a nice suit they thought they could intimidate. They had no idea who I am. Or who my father is. Carter didn't press further. He knew Dana had worked twice as hard to build a career that stood on her own name, not on the Whitaker legacy. But sometimes, being the daughter of the most powerful judge in the country came with consequences, especially when you didn't use it. And this time it wasn't just personal. It was political. 2 hours later, they arrived at Dana's apartment in D.C., where the skyline stretched behind her glass windows. She set the torn passport on the table like a crime scene photo and finally picked up her phone. It rang only once. Pumpkin, came the gravelly but warm voice of Chief Justice Lawrence Whitaker. Hey Dad, Dana said quietly. Pause. What happened? And so she told him. Every detail. From the line at Gate 14 to the cuffs, the slurs, the disbelief in her credentials, and the torn passport. Her father's voice grew tight with each word. They cuffed you? He said finally, almost in a whisper. On federal property? Yes. He took a deep breath. Then it's not just an insult. It's a violation of federal law. I assume you started the process? Carter, who sat on the arm of the couch, nodded at her. Dana replied, already underway. Good. Because I'm going to make a call too. Dad. No, Dana. I stayed quiet when you chose to stand on your own. But this? They ripped up your rights like paper. They're going to answer for it. For a moment, Dana considered stopping him. She didn't want this to become about his power. But something in her gut told her this wasn't just about her anymore. It was bigger. And the fallout had only just begun. The next morning, the footage from the airport was already being scrubbed clean, but Carter had copies saved and backed up in 3 places. More importantly, a junior agent in the DHS field office had leaked it. By noon, the video hit the web. And by 3 p.m. the country was watching. The footage went viral before anyone could contain it. On TikTok it racked up 2 million views in under 4 hours. Twitter was ablaze with the hashtag #RippedPassportAgent, and by nightfall the major news networks had picked up the story. CNN ran the headline, FBI agent mistaken for imposter, detained, humiliated at airport. Fox News took another angle. Chief Justice's daughter detained by overzealous officers. Political firestorm brewing. But it wasn't the media that made Washington tremble, it was the fact that the footage showed everything. The slurs. The torn passport. The handcuffs. And the blank, unfeeling expression on Officer Grant's face as he committed a felony on camera. Dana watched the media storm from her couch, phone buzzing nonstop with requests for interviews, statements, public comments. Her father, meanwhile, had gone completely silent, something the country hadn't seen since the landmark ruling he'd issued 2 years ago. But the silence didn't last. The next morning, Justice Lawrence Whitaker stepped out of his home, flanked by a pair of U.S. Marshals, and addressed the press. "My daughter is not just an FBI agent. She is a citizen of this country. And what happened to her is not a mistake, it's a symptom of a deeper sickness." Reporters erupted with questions. "Justice Whittaker, are you calling for legal action?" He didn't flinch. "I'm calling for accountability. For every woman who's been dismissed. For every citizen whose skin color became a red flag. My daughter will not be silenced, and neither will I." That single clip, less than 30 seconds, was played on every network for days. But behind the cameras, Dana's inbox filled with hate mail, threats, and coordinated harassment. They weren't just angry she was black and powerful, they were angry she dared to speak up. "You stirred the hornet's nest," Carter said quietly, sitting beside her. "You sure you want to go through with this?" Dana looked out the window, jaw clenched. "They're trying to scare me into silence. But I've stared down cartel bosses. I've disarmed bombs with 20 seconds left on the clock. You think I'm going to be intimidated by racists hiding behind badges?" He gave a tight nod. "Then let's push forward." By the end of the week, the Department of Justice launched an internal investigation. Officer Grant was placed on administrative leave. Airport security was ordered to retrain all personnel on protocol and racial bias prevention. But that wasn't enough. Not for Dana. Because someone had tried to erase her identity in a matter of seconds. And the country needed more than a press release. They needed the truth, and she intended to give it to them. 3 days after the DOJ announcement, Dana walked into the Rayburn House office building in a navy suit, her FBI badge clipped neatly at her side. The corridor was lined with flashing cameras and murmuring reporters, but she walked past them like she was made of stone. She was not here to perform. She was here to testify. Before a bipartisan congressional oversight panel, Dana gave her account under oath. Not just of what had happened at the airport, but of the patterns she'd seen over a decade in federal service. Stories of black agents pulled aside at internal security checkpoints. Latina officers mistaken for janitorial staff. A Muslim colleague interrogated after boarding a domestic flight despite being a decorated bomb tech. The room was silent. Then she described the exact moment Officer Grant tore up her passport. "He didn't check the system. He didn't scan the chip. He just decided I couldn't possibly be who I said I was. Not because of any evidence, but because I didn't look like what he expected from a federal agent." One senator leaned forward. "And you believe this is systemic?" Dana met his gaze. "I know it is." Her voice didn't crack. She had practiced this 100 times, but still, it hit different in that room. Because this wasn't just about her humiliation, it was about how many others had suffered in silence. Outside the hearing room, the press swarmed, desperate for a quote. Dana ignored them. Carter guided her through the side exit and into a waiting vehicle. "You were brilliant," he said softly as they drove. "I told the truth," she replied. "That shouldn't be brave. It should be normal." But normal wasn't what they got next. That night, someone leaked a file, one Dana had kept sealed for years. It included details of her undercover missions, surveillance operations, and even her real-time locations over the past 6 months. It wasn't a random hack. It was a warning. Carter showed up at her apartment less than an hour after the breach. "We need to move you to a safe house," he said immediately. Dana was still staring at her screen, jaw clenched. "They want me to back off." Well, they messed with the wrong person. A knock on the door interrupted them. When Dana opened it, standing there in a charcoal black suit was her father, Supreme Court Chief Justice Whittaker, flanked by federal security. "I'm done waiting," he said. "We're pressing charges." Dana blinked. "You mean Officer Grant?" "I mean the entire chain of command. Customs and Border Protection. The Port Authority. And anyone in DHS who signed off on burying this until the video got out." Dana hesitated, then nodded. "Let's burn it down, legally." And so, the next phase began, not a media campaign but a legal crusade. Dana wasn't just seeking justice for herself anymore. She was putting the entire broken system on trial. And the system was not ready. By week 2, the headlines had shifted from sensational outrage to quiet dread in D.C. hallways. FBI agent and Chief Justice's daughter files federal lawsuit naming DHS, CBP officials in civil rights violation. Feds brace for internal shakeup after leaked footage goes global. Who leaked Agent Whittaker's file? DOJ promises full investigation. Dana's name was now etched into every political circle in Washington, not as a victim but as a force. The lawsuit listed not only Officer Grant but his direct supervisor, the station chief, and 2 regional directors at DHS. Dana's team included civil rights attorneys, 2 ex-judges, and an ethics watchdog. The evidence was overwhelming. And then came the twist no one saw coming. On a rainy Thursday morning, Carter burst into Dana's temporary safe house with a flash drive in hand. "You need to see this." She turned from the kitchen counter, coffee half sipped. "What is it?" "A whistleblower inside CBP sent this to the Oversight Committee. They're leaking memos, internal comms, showing they knew who you were before they detained you." Dana froze. "They what?" "They had your arrival flagged 2 days before." "Not because of suspicion," Carter said, holding up the printouts, "but because someone upstairs wanted to make a political example out of you. Someone wanted footage of a high-profile incident involving a black federal agent to stir public opinion against woke overreach." Dana stared at the screen as Carter scrolled through the redacted emails. Terms like optics control, strategic detainment, and media bait jumped out like flashing sirens. It wasn't incompetence. It was a setup. For days, Dana had thought this was about unconscious bias. A rogue officer. Maybe even negligence. But now she realized it was worse. They planned it. Her mind reeled. They used me to manipulate public perception. To spin a narrative about black agents being unqualified, and then hoped I'd react, lash out, so they could bury me. Carter's voice was low. "Except you didn't. You stayed calm. You exposed it instead." Her father called later that night. "The Attorney General just saw the memos. There's panic at the top." "What now?" Dana asked. He paused. "Now, we go further. If this was strategic, it wasn't just about race. It was about silencing reformers. You represent everything they fear. Then let's give them something to really fear," Dana whispered. That night, Dana's legal team added another charge to the suit: conspiracy to violate civil rights under color of law, a charge that, if proven, could implicate multiple senior government officials and even derail high-level nominations in Congress. For the first time, Dana realized this wasn't just about her career or reputation. It was a war over the soul of the very system she had sworn to defend. The media firestorm reignited with nuclear force. CNN called it one of the most explosive civil rights cases since the church hearings. Fox News now scrambled to walk back earlier takes, with pundits nervously speculating, was this an intentional sabotage from inside the department? The Washington Post broke the biggest headline yet, confirmed, internal emails reveal orchestrated targeting of black FBI agent for political gain. Dana's phone was nonstop. Requests for interviews poured in from every outlet, including foreign ones, BBC, Al Jazeera, even Der Spiegel. But she turned them all down. She wasn't here to be a media figure. She was here to take down a system that had preyed on silence for too long. And now it was Dana who had the power. The FBI issued a rare internal apology. CBP put 3 regional officials on unpaid suspension. DHS announced a formal review of all security profiling cases dating back 5 years. But it wasn't enough. "You don't get to apologize for a conspiracy," Dana said bluntly to her team in a closed-door strategy meeting. "You expose it. You uproot it. And you replace it." The twist deepened days later when a second whistleblower came forward, this time from inside the DOJ. He confirmed that not only was Dana's identity leaked, but her entire operation history was put at risk. Her work in anti-cartel intelligence, covert domestic counter-surveillance, even a sting operation that had dismantled a white nationalist cell just months earlier. Someone had tried to burn her from the inside out. "You think they're scared now?" Carter asked, eyes narrow as they pored over more emails. "No," Dana said. "They're desperate." And that desperation showed. Dana's apartment was broken into the following night. Nothing was taken. But her safe, where she stored old case files, was left open, the papers rifled through. Cameras were disabled. It was a message. A threat. "You need full security detail 24/7, Carter said. "I already have one," Dana replied, motioning to her chest where her badge now hung in full view. "And I'm done hiding." The final push came not from Dana, but from someone unexpected. Chief Justice Whitaker called a rare joint press conference, joined by 5 retired federal judges, 3 former FBI directors, and a sea of civil rights attorneys. He didn't read a speech. He just spoke. "They used my daughter to test how far they could push the line. How much silence they could still buy. But what they forgot is that my daughter was raised to break silence, not fear it." Dana stood beside him, stone-faced, unmoved. She wasn't here to be seen as a victim anymore. She was the reckoning. And as the nation watched, the true impact settled in. This wasn't about a passport. This was about power, abuse, race, and redemption. And the reckoning had only just begun. As the courtroom doors creaked open on the first day of the federal trial, the tension inside the D.C. District Courthouse could have been cut with a knife. Every seat was filled. Media, activists, government watchers, and quiet citizens who had followed Dana's case like a national drama. Dana sat poised at the plaintiff's table in a charcoal gray suit, expression unreadable, flanked by her legal team. Her father was not beside her, by design. He had recused himself from all public judicial commentary during the proceedings to maintain the credibility of the bench. But he watched from a private gallery, eyes shielded by dark glasses. On the defense side sat a team of department attorneys, stone-faced. Officer Grant, wearing a suit 2 sizes too large and a nervous tick in his jaw, avoided eye contact at all costs. The opening statements were tense. Dana's lead attorney, Charisse Langston, didn't waste time on pleasantries. This case is not about a misunderstanding. It's about a calculated decision, from a network of individuals who believed that a black woman could not be a federal agent, who chose to tear up her credentials in front of a crowd, and who, after learning her identity, sought to cover it up with conspiracy and silence. That ends today. The defense's rebuttal was weak at best. There was no intentional targeting, the lawyer said. Mistakes were made but not malice. But then the evidence began to roll in. Internal emails showing Dana's arrival had been tagged. A voice recording where Officer Grant said, "We'll finally get a good example for the public." The surveillance footage from inside the secure hall showing the officer's grin as he ripped the passport. The memo referencing strategic detainment optics. One by one, every lie unraveled. Dana took the stand on the third day. And as she sat before the jury, she didn't offer anger. She offered clarity. "I've worked undercover in some of the most dangerous operations this country has ever authorized. I've protected judges, dismantled extremist plots, and chased terrorists through foreign cities. But I've never felt as powerless as I did that day, cuffed in my own country for simply being me." You could hear a pin drop. "But I'm not here because I was humiliated," she added. "I'm here because if I don't speak up, the next young girl who earns her badge might be silenced before she ever gets the chance to wear it." When she stepped down, the courtroom erupted into quiet tears and tight nods. Even the judge, an old Federalist known for stoicism, had to pause before continuing. That evening, Dana received a handwritten letter slipped under her safe house door. It had no return address. Read, "They did the same to my sister. She never made it out. Thank you for fighting for those of us who didn't get a second chance. A brother." Dana sat still for a long time after reading it. This wasn't just a trial anymore. It was a movement. And every hour they stood their ground, the system bent a little further toward justice. The courthouse was different on the final day. Gone was the tension of uncertainty. In its place, a palpable weight of justice hovered in the air like a held breath. Everyone knew this was more than a verdict. It was a referendum on how deep institutional rot could go, and whether power would finally be held to account. Dana sat quietly at the plaintiff's table, her fingers loosely laced in front of her. Carter, seated 2 rows behind her, gave her a silent nod of encouragement. Her father remained absent, honoring the boundary between justice and personal vengeance. But Dana could feel him with her nonetheless. The jury filed in, each face etched with gravity. The foreman stood and cleared his throat. In the matter of Dana Whitaker versus the Department of Homeland Security and affiliated parties, we, the jury, find the defendants guilty on all counts. The courtroom gasped. Guilty of conspiracy to violate civil rights. Guilty of abuse of power under color of law. Guilty of falsifying internal documentation. Guilty of retaliatory endangerment. The judge didn't waste words. Let this serve as a warning to any system that believes silence can shield it. Justice, once awakened, does not sleep. The sentencing hearing was scheduled for a month later. Officer Grant faced up to 25 years for his role. 2 DHS directors were immediately terminated. One resigned with a public apology. The others? Under criminal investigation. Dana walked out of the courthouse that day not with her head held high, but with her shoulders finally a little lighter. Outside, reporters rushed toward her, microphones extended, questions flying. "Agent Whitaker, do you have a statement?" She paused. Then spoke, voice clear and strong. "This isn't a win for me. It's a win for every person who's ever been told they didn't belong. Who's ever had their truth torn up in front of them. I'm not special. I'm just loud. And if being loud brings change, then so be it." Cameras flashed. A little girl standing near the barricade reached over and held up a handmade sign. Future agent. Thank you, Dana. Dana smiled, walked over, and knelt down beside her. You won't just be an agent, she whispered. You'll be a force. The crowd roared. Later that night, back at her apartment, Dana poured herself a glass of water, standing before the framed fragments of her torn passport now hanging in a shadow box above her desk. It was a scar. But it was also a badge of survival. Carter called. They're calling it the Whitaker precedent now, he said. A new policy proposal is in the works. Mandatory racial bias training across all federal entry points. Anonymous profiling audits. Independent oversight. Dana nodded. Good. He paused. You sure you're okay? She smiled faintly. I'm not okay, but I'm better. And I'm not done. Because deep inside, Dana knew this story didn't end with a verdict. This was the start of something much bigger. Months later, Washington looked different. The hearings sparked by Dana's case had birthed what pundits now called the Whitaker reforms. A bipartisan coalition passed legislation mandating body cam usage for all federal officers at ports of entry, standardized passport validation protocols across all states, and, most importantly, a new federal watchdog group composed of civilian oversight and civil rights attorneys. Dana had been offered numerous awards, medals, TV specials, a book deal. A documentary crew even offered her a 7-figure contract. She turned them all down. Instead, she founded something far more impactful, the Veritas Initiative, a nonpartisan legal advocacy group providing resources and representation for those falsely accused, profiled, or wrongfully detained by law enforcement or government agencies. It wasn't glamorous. It wasn't televised. But it was real. One morning, Dana walked into a classroom at Howard University. Rows of eager students looked up as she took her place at the podium. She wore no badge, no gun. Just a plain gray suit and a quiet confidence forged through fire. Before we begin, she said, how many of you have ever been told you couldn't do something because of who you are? Almost every hand rose. She nodded. Then you're exactly where you belong. Because the only thing more powerful than knowing the law is knowing how to fight with it. Applause echoed through the room. Outside, a new mural had been painted on the side of the law school building. Dana Whitaker standing strong, the shadow of the Supreme Court behind her, and at her feet, the torn passport, now whole, glowing with golden light. That afternoon, she received a call from her father. They want to name a bill after you, he said. Dana smiled as she sipped her tea. Then make sure it's not about me. Make it about the girl after me. The one who'll never have to prove she belongs because someone already burned down that barrier. Her father chuckled. You're still that same firecracker from the 4th grade debate team. No, Dana said softly. I'm something different now. I'm proof that even when the system fails, justice can rise, if someone's brave enough to rip the silence wide open. As the sun set over the DC skyline, Dana Whitaker looked out over the city that once tried to erase her. She didn't just survive it. She changed it. What began with a ripped passport became a national reckoning. Dana Whitaker didn't just fight back, she rewrote the rules. Her story reminds us that power unchecked is dangerous, but truth unshaken is unstoppable. As Dana once said, I'm not special. I'm just loud. And if being loud brings change, then so be it. If her courage moved you, share this story. Subscribe to True Echo for more powerful, inspiring real-life dramas that echo far beyond the moment. Leave a comment below, your voice matters. And remember, silence protects the system. Speaking up changes it.